There was only a 2-foot gap between my balcony and his, and by the end I realized he never once asked permission before crossing it. Last year, after living blissfully alone in my first apartment for 12 months, a man moved in next door that I will never forget. The layout is crucial to understanding what happened. My building has a standard design. Each unit has a small balcony. Mine and my neighbors are separated by a partial wall, but there's a solid 2-foot gap where you can easily step from one side to the other. For context, I'd had a lovely older woman living next door my entire first year. She never once crossed that threshold without being explicitly invited. Garden parties, morning coffee, always an invitation first. So I wasn't concerned about someone entering my space uninvited. That changed when Marcus moved in. I met him the day he arrived. I was pulling into my assigned parking spot when I saw him unloading groceries from a massive pickup truck in the space next to mine. A young woman, I assumed his girlfriend, was helping him carry boxes from Costco. They were talking as I approached, but the moment I stepped out of my car, they went silent. I nodded politely and headed toward the elevator. Suddenly, Marcus jogged up behind me, dropped his boxes, and asked me to hold the door. "No problem," I said. "I'm a good neighbor." In the elevator, his girlfriend refused to make eye contact or speak, but Marcus immediately introduced himself. In the 45 seconds it took to reach our floor, he asked where I was from, how I liked the building, and where I worked. Looking back, his enthusiasm felt off, but I chalked it up to new neighbor excitement. Let's call him Marcus. He was 34, about 6 feet tall, slim but muscular, with his hair buzzed short like he was masking early balding, average looking by all accounts. Over the first few weeks, we ran into each other often. He always made small talk, and he always called me Miss, like I was some character in an old movie. I almost never saw his girlfriend after that first night, but occasionally I'd hear him talking to a woman through the thin walls. About 3 months after Marcus moved in, my boyfriend Jake was over watching a movie. It was maybe 11:30 p.m. We were on my couch, which sits against the wall I share with Marcus. Suddenly, we heard banging. "Think there?" Jake raised an eyebrow. I laughed. "Probably." We turned up the volume, but then the banging got louder, and we heard screaming. Not playful, not passionate, angry, terrified. Glass shattered. Objects hit walls. I could hear her sobbing through the drywall. Jake stepped onto the semi-shared balcony and shouted over, "Hey, everything okay in there?" A minute later, the girlfriend opened Marcus's sliding door. Her face was blotchy, eyes red. "Sorry about that," she mumbled. "We'll keep it down." She closed the door. Jake and I looked at each other. "Should we call someone?" I whispered. "I don't know. She said she's fine." We went to bed. Big mistake. I woke around 3 a.m. to more screaming. Jake wouldn't wake up. I lay there staring at the ceiling, convincing myself I was dreaming. I deeply regret that decision. The next morning, I got terrible personal news, a family emergency, and pushed the previous night's events to the back of my mind. 2 weeks later, on a warm afternoon, I was on my balcony reading. I was wearing a tank top, shorts, and a light robe. My chair faced away from Marcus's side. Suddenly, someone tapped my shoulder. I jumped. Marcus was standing behind me. "Hey, miss, can we talk for a sec?" He'd crossed onto my balcony, uninvited. I couldn't get to my door without physically moving him, so I forced a smile. "What's up?" "It's my birthday," he said, grinning. "You know where I can get some weed? You seem like a girl who knows how to have a good time." We live in a state where weed is legal, so I told him Google would help. I didn't have any on me. Then he leaned in. "I got really drunk last night," he said, almost laughing. "And I scratched your car. My bad." My stomach dropped. He was smiling. "I'll send you my insurance info if you give me your number." "No need," I said quickly. "I know where you live. I'll just knock if I need it." "Or I could leave my info on your door," he countered. "Actually, I'd rather just pay you cash. Keep insurance out of it." I mumbled something non-committal and he finally left. An hour later, I checked my car. 2 long scratches down the driver's side door, not deep, but deliberate. I decided not to pursue it. I just wanted distance. The next night, I was home alone watching a loud action movie around 11 p.m. My cat was curled on my lap. Suddenly, he jumped up, fur standing on end. I paused the movie. Bang, bang, bang. Someone was pounding on my door. "Open up, it's the police." My blood turned to ice. I'd smoked a joint on the balcony 20 minutes earlier. I was high, panicking. I checked the peephole. A cop's face filled the lens. I opened the door. 6 officers, guns drawn. "Ma'am, you're not in trouble," the lead officer said, sensing my panic. "We need to talk about your neighbor. Can we come in?" I let them inside, hard in my throat. "Have you had interactions with Marcus?" "Barely. He just moved in a few months ago." "He's a bad guy," the officer said bluntly. "Last night he put his girlfriend in the ICU. She's in critical condition. He's armed and barricaded inside his apartment. We need to use your balcony." I couldn't breathe. "Go to your bedroom, lock the door, turn off the lights." I obeyed. The next 45 minutes were hell. I'd left my phone in the kitchen. I sat in the dark, listening to shouting, crashing, commands barked through megaphones. No shots fired, but it sounded like war. Finally, a knock. "He's in custody, thank you, ma'am." They asked more questions, then left. I wish that was the end. 5 days later, Marcus was back. I saw him in the lobby as I came home from work. He tried to approach me, but the elevator doors closed just in time. I stayed off my balcony entirely after that, curtains always drawn. A few weeks later, he cornered me in the parking lot. "Why'd you let the cops in?" he demanded. I was high, I panicked. "I don't trust cops either." "Bullshit." He stepped closer. "I'll give you $3,000 to testify as a character witness. You know me, you know how I treat women." I was speechless. "My hearing's Thursday morning. Can you show up?" I mumbled something incoherent and fled. The Wednesday before his trial, I came home to find my cat spooked, tail puffed. Through the curtains, I saw something taped to my sliding glass door. A post-it note. On it, a phone number, a name, and underneath, "I'm counting on you." He'd been on my balcony, again. I grabbed my cat, locked everything, took a photo of the note, and drove to my mom's house. I called the police. They never followed up. 5 days later, my boyfriend and I returned together. Everything was untouched. I never saw Marcus again. A few weeks later, a woman I didn't recognize cleaned out his apartment. New tenants moved in a month after that. I tried calling the county jail to see if he was still locked up. They wouldn't release information. I'm hoping that means he's there. But sometimes, late at night, I still check the balcony door, just to make sure it's locked. Story 2. He called my name through the open window while I hid in my bathroom. "I know you're home, Claire. I just have a few questions." And that's when I realized my neighbor had been tracking my every move since the day I moved in. At the beginning of my junior year of college, I moved into a small rental house with my friend Rachel. The place was perfect. 2 bedrooms, a front porch, walking distance to campus. Exactly what we needed. We shared a driveway with the house next door, which meant our neighbor's front door was maybe 15 feet from ours. I met him on the second day. I was on the porch with my friend Kayla, finishing up some reading between classes. We were passing a joint back and forth when this guy walked up the shared driveway. He stopped, smiled, and waved. "Hey, you must be new here." "Yeah, just moved in yesterday," I said. "Cool. Do you know Rachel?" "She's my roommate." "No way. Small world. I'm Derek." We chatted for maybe 2 minutes. He seemed fine, normal, maybe a little overly friendly, but that's college. I offered him a hit. He took one, thanked me, and went inside his place. Kayla left around an hour later. I stayed on the porch finishing an essay. About 10 minutes after she drove off, Derek came back outside. "Hey again," he said, walking toward my porch. "Hey." He didn't stop at the driveway. He came up my stairs, sat down on the railing like we were old friends. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "So there's this girl I've been talking to, but she's also hooking up with some other guy, like she sends him nudes and everything. Why won't she do that with me?" I blinked. Maybe she's just not into you like that. But we talk all the time. I'm nice to her." I tried to navigate the conversation as gently as possible, but he kept pushing. "Would you hook up with someone right after meeting them?" "I mean, it depends." "Do you think I'm attractive?" My stomach tightened. "I don't really know you," I said carefully. He leaned closer. "You're beautiful, you know that? Like one of the sexiest girls I've seen in a while." I stood up. "I actually have a ton of work to finish, so I'm gonna head inside, but I'll see you around." "Yeah, totally. See you." He left. I locked the door. A few nights later, I got back from a friend's place around 11 p.m. She dropped me off in the driveway and drove away. I was unlocking my front door when Derek's door flew open. He practically ran over. "Hey, you just getting back?" "Yeah." "You want to hang out? I have a paper due tomorrow. I really need to finish it." "We can do it together. Then maybe after we can just chill." Watch something. Cuddle. I don't think so. Come on, just for a little bit. I really can't. He shifted his weight, stepping slightly between me and my door. Can I ask you something? I guess. What kind of stuff are you into, like sexually? I froze. I don't think that's... I'm just curious. You seem cool, open-minded. I really need to go inside. Would you ever hook up with me? No? Why not? I just wouldn't. Not even once? No. He stared at me for a long moment. Can I at least get a hug? I don't think so. Just a hug, come on. I really need to. Before I could finish, he grabbed me. He pulled me against his chest, arms locked around my back, squeezing tight. I went rigid. My brain screamed at me to move, but my body wouldn't respond. After what felt like forever, I shoved him off and stumbled toward my door. See you later, he called after me like nothing happened. I slammed the door and locked it. A few days later, I was cooking dinner when I heard a knock. I peeked around the corner. Derek. My stomach dropped. I didn't answer. I crept into the bathroom and sat on the floor, hoping he'd think I wasn't home. 3 more knocks. Then silence. Then, Claire? His voice came through the open window next to my front door. Hello? Claire, I know you're home. I held my breath. I just have a few questions. Where are you? I texted my friend Ethan, who lived in a fraternity house 2 blocks away. Can you come over right now and pretend we're hanging out? Emergency. He replied immediately. On my way. 5 minutes later, I heard Ethan's voice outside. Hey man, what's up? I crept to the door and listened. Oh, hey. Are you Claire's boyfriend? Just a friend. Why? She told me she was doing homework tonight, but now she's having people over. She texted me to come help her with something. Do you think she likes me? I don't know, man. Can you tell me more about her? Ethan deflected like a pro. I opened the door and pulled him inside. Derek was still standing on my porch. Claire, hey, can you come outside real quick? I stepped out but kept Ethan right behind me. What's up? I just wanted to ask, do you think we could hang out sometime? Like, actually hang out? I'm really busy with classes. Can I get a hug? I'll see you later. I went back inside and locked the door. The next day, Rachel came back from her boyfriend's place. I told her everything. She went pale. Oh my God, he does the same thing to me. What? He waits outside for me, watches me go running, asks me to hang out, tries to hug me. I thought I was overreacting. She told her boyfriend Tyler. He went over to Derek's house that night. I don't know what he said, but Derek never made eye contact with me again. For a while, I thought it was over. Then, about 2 weeks later, I was walking back from the library late at night. As I turned onto our street, I saw Derek sitting on his porch, in the dark, just sitting there. When I walked past, he didn't say anything, didn't move, just watched. I went inside and locked every door, every window. The next morning, I found a note taped to my car windshield. It said, I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I was just trying to be friendly. I hope we can still be neighbors. No signature. But I knew. I showed Rachel. She showed Tyler. Tyler told us to call campus police. We filed a report. They said they'd keep an eye on things. Nothing changed. Derek still lives next door. He doesn't talk to me anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I hear his door open. And I know he's watching. A few months later, I was scrolling through a campus safety forum when I saw a post from a girl who lived 2 streets over. She described a guy who kept showing up at her house uninvited, asking her sexual questions, forcing hugs, waiting outside for her at night. She didn't include a name. But she included a photo. It was Derek. There were 4 other comments below hers, all from different girls, all describing the same behavior. All from our neighborhood. I don't live in that house anymore. I moved out at the end of the semester. But I still think about the other girls on that street, and I wonder how many of them are still living next door to him.
Story 3.
If you've ever felt like a neighbor was watching you a little too closely, stick around for this one, because by the end, you'll wish you trusted that feeling sooner. 6 years ago, when I was 16, my family moved into a new apartment complex, and within the first month we adopted a rescue puppy named Bear. He was sweet with people, but he had brutal separation anxiety. Every time we left, he'd howl and scratch at the door for nearly an hour. I figured our neighbors must have hated us, but every single one I asked said they barely noticed. Quiet building, quiet people, no complaints, except for one man. I'll call him Daniel. Daniel lived 2 floors below us and worked night shifts somewhere he never specified. One Saturday afternoon, home alone, I heard a knock. I opened the door and a man I didn't recognize stood there. He looked startled to see a teenager answer, like he'd expected someone else. Then he smiled, almost too warmly, and asked if my parents could come talk to him later. I said sure. He left without another word. When my parents got home and my dad went down to see what was going on, Daniel was perfectly reasonable, almost rehearsed. He explained he slept during the day because of his job, apologized for scaring me by showing up when I was alone, and asked politely if we could help quiet the dog down. My dad apologized too. They shook hands. It seemed like a normal, mature conversation between neighbors. We worked harder on Bear's anxiety after that, and it helped. He still barked, but less. Things seemed fine. Then Bear started doing something strange. Every time he heard footsteps on the stairwell, specifically Daniel's, he would lose his mind. Not playful barking, snarling, lunging at the door, hackles raised. He never did that for anyone else in the building, not even strangers. And around the same time, Daniel stopped speaking to us entirely. No nod in the hallway, no small talk, just long blank stares before he'd turn and walk away. A few weeks later, my mom and I came home to find 6 deep gouges in our front door, like someone had dragged a key or a knife across it, hard, more than once. My mom, trying to find an innocent explanation, wondered if we'd done it ourselves and forgotten. I knew we hadn't. Then our neighbor Renee called, panicked, asking if I'd been home alone that afternoon. I hadn't been. She told us that someone had been pounding on our door for several minutes, screaming and cursing loud enough that her 11-year-old son hid under his bed for hours afterward, convinced someone was breaking into the building. We didn't connect it to Daniel yet. We wanted to believe it was a stranger, a one-time thing, kids messing around. We were wrong, and the building was about to show us exactly how wrong. A few weeks after that, there was a neighborhood night festival, and we went with Renee's family. We came back a little before midnight. As we climbed the stairs to our floor, our doorbell rang from inside, except no one had touched it. We hadn't pressed it. It rang on its own a few seconds after we reached the door. My dad froze, told us to stay back, and didn't go check who was downstairs like he normally would have for a late delivery. Something about the timing felt wrong. We went inside and locked the door. The next morning, Renee told my mom something that made her go pale. When her family had come home from the festival the night before, right around the same time we had, they'd found Daniel crouched in the dark beneath the stairwell, gripping a baseball bat with both hands. He told them someone had rung a doorbell and he'd come down to check on it, even though it wasn't his door. He looked terrified when they found him, like he'd been caught doing something he couldn't explain. My mother put it together instantly. Daniel had rung our bell from somewhere out of sight, then waited under the stairs with a bat, expecting my father to come down alone to investigate. The same thing my dad did every single time the bell rang at a strange hour. The only reason it didn't happen that night was a fluke of timing. When my dad heard this, he didn't wait. He went straight down to Daniel's door and knocked, calm on the outside but shaking with rage. The second Daniel saw him, his face drained of color. He started crying immediately, almost collapsing, and admitted everything in a rush. He'd been struggling with a drug problem for months and barely remembered some of what he'd done. He confessed to carving the door himself with a pocket knife. He confessed to the night of screaming and pounding, and he didn't deny the bat. It turned out Bear had never been reacting to anxiety when Daniel walked by. He'd been reacting to Daniel because Daniel had been coming up to our door during the day, when the building was empty, and kicking it just to provoke the dog into a frenzy. That was the real source of the barking the whole time. My father told him very quietly that this was the only warning he'd get. If Daniel ever came near our door, our floor, or looked at any of us again, there would be consequences. Daniel kept sobbing, even reaching out like he wanted to hug my dad, who stepped back and walked away without another word. We filed a police report that day. It wasn't the end of the story. Weeks later, we learned the rest from another tenant. Daniel's wife had thrown him out and gotten a restraining order for herself and their young daughter. The reason came out almost as an afterthought, the kind of detail people mention quietly because it's too disturbing to say loudly. She'd woken up one night to find him standing motionless at the foot of their bed, just staring at her and their daughter while they slept. When she got up, she realized the stove had been left on for hours, and the entire apartment reeked of gas. We moved out not long after. I think about that doorbell sometimes, the one that rang itself in the middle of the night. We never did find out how, or whether he was still down there, waiting.
Story 4.
I need to tell you something I've never said out loud in full, because every time I start, I hear my own mother's voice telling me I imagined it. So before I tell you what happened, I want you to remember one thing. My gut was right. It was always right, and nobody believed me until it was almost too late. I grew up in a trailer park on the rough edge of a city most people only knew from the news. Our lot sat against a bar that got shut down for fights every few months and reopened under a new name like nothing happened. I was used to strangers, used to danger that had a face and a name and a reason to stay away from it. What I wasn't ready for was danger that smiled, waved, and brought gifts. For a few years, the trailer next to ours sat mostly empty, owned by a family who was never around. Then a single mom and her 2 daughters moved in, and for a while that fence between our homes felt like a wall against the rest of the world. When they got evicted, I lost the only friends I had in that park, and that's when Daniel moved in. I was 14. He was somewhere in his late 20s, easy enough for a teenager to read as old, but young enough that my parents treated him like a peer. He had friends over constantly, loud, drinking, the kind of crowd that reminded me of the bar on our other side. And from the very first week, things were strange, partly because my stepfather built a 6-foot fence between our lots specifically because Daniel was black, and made sure Daniel heard exactly why. Daniel never said a word about it. He waved at us every single day like nothing happened, and that kindness, that quiet grace in the face of my stepfather's cruelty, made me feel like I owed him something. That feeling would turn out to be the most dangerous thing in this entire story. It started small. Our mailbox sat in the middle of the park, a walk I made alone most afternoons as one of my chores. I started noticing that whenever I left for it, Daniel and his friends would drift toward the front of his yard. By the time I came back, they'd be clustered by his porch, watching. He'd say hello, they'd just stare, and laugh. I told myself I was imagining it. I'd always been the anxious kid, the one my family joked would grow out of, being scared of strangers. I never did grow out of it, and it turns out that fear had been trying to protect me the entire time. Then Daniel started walking to the mailbox with me every day. Small talk about school, about my day, completely normal questions wrapped around something that made every nerve in my body scream. I noticed he never once checked his own mail, not once. Then came the afternoon he leaned in and told me, quietly, like a secret between us, that I had really great legs. Said not to tell my dad. I stopped checking the mail for almost a month. When my mother finally noticed and accused me of being lazy, I told her the truth. She laughed. She told my stepfather at dinner like it was a joke, and he just shrugged and said, "Well, you do have nice legs, so what?" That was the moment I learned that telling the truth wouldn't save me. So I stopped checking the mail for a while, and Daniel backed off, for a few months. Then the shower window started. It was a small crank window above the shower, just wide enough to let steam out, something I'd opened 1,000 times since I was a little kid. One evening I cracked it open and looked out, and found Daniel already looking in, smiling slowly. I told myself it was a coincidence. It happened 3 more times before I started taking ice-cold showers just to avoid opening that window at all. After that, he started waiting for me at the bus stop, in the driveway, blocking my path to my own front gate, making small talk while I tried to inch past him to let my dogs out. A girl from school, a year younger than me, started walking with me partway home after she told me he'd done the same thing to her, called her hair beautiful, and she'd told him to get lost. We built a system. She'd walk me to my driveway. I'd watch her from my porch until she turned the corner out of sight. It worked for a while. Then it got dark earlier and my mornings became solitary again. Both my parents left for work before sunrise, and Daniel started being outside exactly when I was. Waiting, pacing, whistling. On Halloween, I wore a costume to school. Nothing extreme, just more fitted than what I normally wore. He caught up to me before I made it past his driveway and told me I was growing up nice and to be careful with boys. I ran the rest of the way to the bus stop. After that, he waited at my gate every single morning. He started touching my shoulder, my back. I began faking sick days just to avoid him, calling my mother at work with excuses, begging rides from a friend who was terrified by how angry Daniel looked every time he saw me leave in someone else's car. Then came the gift. After I'd missed nearly a week of school, he was waiting in his driveway with 3 friends. He called my name, my actual name, which until that moment I hadn't realized he knew. He handed me a beaded door hanger. It had my name spelled out in beads in the exact color scheme of my bedroom, a room with curtains I never opened, a room he had never, as far as I knew, set foot near. I said something like thank you and walked inside while he and his friends laughed behind me. I left that trailer park as soon as I possibly could. Dropped out, got my GED, took a job, stopped being home if I could help it. And for years, I thought that was the end of the story. It wasn't. 3 years later, after my stepfather was arrested by federal agents and sent to prison, my mother called me one night. She asked casually what I thought of Daniel. I didn't recognize the name at first, then she reminded me, the neighbor, the one my stepfather hated. I told her exactly what I thought of him. Creepy, always had been. There was a long silence on the line, then she said, "Oh, well, he kissed me. I think I like him." I reminded her about the legs comment, the shower window, the gift with my name on it. Her response was almost identical to the one she gave when I was 14, that I was just scared of everyone, that I probably had a crush on him and didn't even realize it. It didn't work out between them, not romantically anyway. What did happen is that Daniel moved into her trailer without ever being asked, refused to leave, and eventually had to be physically removed from the property. I think about that door hanger sometimes, how he knew my name before he ever said it out loud. How he knew the colors of a room he was never supposed to have seen. I never asked him how, and to this day, I don't know who else he was watching or whether somewhere out there he still is.